Welcome to CBS News. I'm Robert Costa, the chief election and campaign correspondent. Now that the midterm elections are over, attention is beginning to turn toward the 2024 election. Of course, it is early, but as we look ahead, one of the key Senate races in the coming years might be in Arizona. Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who will be up for re-election, she recently decided to switch her party affiliation. She was elected as a Democrat to the Senate in 2018, but she now identifies as an independent. Her decision, announced earlier this month, has sparked a lot of debate inside the Democratic Party about how to handle her new status. Some say she should be challenged by a Democrat, potentially setting up a three-way contest against her and a Republican and a Democrat. Others say Democrats should wait and see how she handles the next year before deciding whether to challenge her. One possible challenger who might not want to wait is Congressman Ruben Gallego of Arizona. He is a Marine Corps veteran, the son of immigrants, and was elected first to the House representing the Phoenix area in 2014. And he joins us now for a conversation about Arizona's political future and perhaps his own. Congressman, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it to stop by CBS News and have a conversation. As you look ahead to 2023, what are the key factors in your decision-making process about whether to get into that 2024 Senate race against now independent affiliated Senator Kyrsten Sinema?
Well, the number one most important thing is listen to Arizonans. They're the people that should be making this decision. Not DC pundits, not the DNC, not the DSCC. It's the Arizonans and what type of representation do they want. And I have been talking to them all year. I'll continue to go back over the recess and talk to them. And I think that'll be really help me inform my decision. And lastly, just talking to my family. You know, I have a young family. These types of campaigns take work. And when I get into these campaigns, I put 110% into it. And you know, you have to make sure that's right time for your family.
You just said it doesn't matter what the DSCC does with regard to this race. That's the Democratic Senate campaign arm, the operation that supports Senate Democrats running for re-election. They haven't weighed in yet about how they're going to handle Senator Sinema. So if they don't make a firm decision, that's not going to affect your decision?
That's correct. And even if they make a firm decision, even against me, that's still not going to affect my decision. They don't have the power to make this decision. This decision is going to be made by the voters of Arizona. We have so much support already coming in. You know, people went and found my website, www.Gallego for Arizona, and have been overwhelming me with, you know, donations, asking me to run. And that has nothing to do with the DSCC or anybody else. That just has to do with people wanting to see change in Arizona.
Are you disappointed with the reaction by the Senate Democratic leadership and the White House about her switch from the Democratic Party to independent?
No, look, I have to be realistic about this. She's staying and she's caucusing with the Democrats. I think that's extremely important for us to continue our agenda. It's not their fight to remove her from office. It's my fight, and it's the fight of people in Arizona. And at the end of the day, we're going to do that with or without them. And so they have to continue doing their jobs, and we'll end up doing ours.
How do you see it, though, this possible race? Do you consider yourself, if you got in, to be a progressive challenger of a now independent senator, or would you see it in a different way? How do you frame this possible matchup?
Well, I think the possible matchup is a responsive, you know, senator versus a non-responsive senator. You know, there is nothing independent about selling out, you know, the agenda, the Democratic agenda for you know, hedge fund managers. There's nothing very much aligned with Arizona values when you water down our pharmaceutical competitive pricing bill for pharma. You know, that's never going to sell in Arizona. So should we decide to jump in, we're going to sell right away that you're going to have a responsive senator. You're going to have a senator that actually has town halls. You know, Kyrsten Sinema has not met with any Arizonans in an unscripted town hall in what we count about 3 years now. That's not representing your state. And I think at the end of the day, that's what will win the day.
Do you believe you could clear the field among Democrats who are thinking about running against her?
I don't know if I can clear the field, but I do know that no matter who runs against me, I'm going to win, and I'm going to win by large enough margins that it will not affect me in a general election.
How likely is it that you run for the U.S. Senate?
Look, I'm not going to give percentages on that. What I can tell you, because of the nature of who I am and what I do, I always prepare. So we've been putting the team together to make sure that when I make that final decision, we're going to be able to press enter and just go. And so we're going to do that. I'm going to stick to my timeline, talk to my family, enjoy the holidays, and then we'll make decisions after that.
And I'm not trying to mess with your holidays, Congressman, and not trying to make it get into percentages either, but it seems like you are likely to move in that direction, no?
Look, if the people that know me in Arizona, this is exactly what I did also leading up to the 2020 elections about whether to decide to run or not. I'd make sure to put the right team together so that way I knew that when I wanted to go, I would go and I wouldn't have any lag time. Same thing's happening now. At the end of the day, I'm going to take my time, make my decisions, and then we'll go.
And are you interviewing potential advisors when you look through this possibility, and who are you talking to?
Well, yes. So obviously we are. We have already had many advisors on for at least a year now. We just recently signed a GBAO strategy, Senator Fetterman's and Senator Warnock's polling firm. We've brought in a couple other strategists that have worked on successful senatorial campaigns this year. And, we already have them on the ground, and they're helping me do the research that I need to make a decision.
So you're putting a machine in place politically for if you do make the decision, it's going to be ready come early next year. I know you haven't decided, but you're definitely building the machine, it seems, behind the scenes to be ready should you get to that point.
100%. Look, I've always been very open and transparent about this. When I think about things, I don't think about, campaigns in the way that most normal politicians do. I think about it more from my military Marine background. You prepare for the fight, and the best way to win a fight is to be prepared for that fight. And that's why I'm doing it in this manner.
Are donors encouraging you? Would the money be there for this would be a major Senate race against an incumbent who's slightly affiliated with the Democrats but calls herself an independent?
We have had massive support already, what we've seen online. But in addition to that, throughout all of last year, I've been meeting with big donors, national donors, the donors that give to the DSCCs and other organizations, and they've all been encouraging me to run. They've all have said that if I decide to make that leap, that they would go with me. So I do think we're going to have the support of major donors. But what we've also seen right now, we've also seen what is more important is the small dollar donors that are also there. And those grassroots donors are going to propel us, and they will overcome anything that the hedge fund managers of Wall Street are going to be able to throw at us.
This is a crucial crossroads in your political career. You might just jump into a major nationally watched Senate race in the coming months. Is anyone behind the scenes at the higher ranks of the Democratic Party saying to you privately in a phone call, a text message, an email, Congressman, stay out of the race. It's not helpful if you get in?
No, actually, not one person, to be honest. I think I've had friends counsel me and say, hey, make sure you consider this or that. But there's nobody at any level or rank within the Democratic Party or just a greater higher ups, you want to call them that have been asking me to stay out of this.
No one's leaning on you in any way to stay out?
No.
What about to get in? Maybe they can't say it publicly, but are some major names in the Senate or in the House privately telling you better run?
So there's been some senators that have encouraged me to run. I wouldn't say you better run, but there are some senators, some of Sinema's colleagues that are encouraging me to run. A lot of House members want me to run. But also, look, there's just a lot of people, real people, that want me to run. They really end up being the most, consequential conversations that I'm having.
Those senators who want you to run, do you think they would ever publicly get behind you if you got in the race?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but again, like they're not my decision factor. What's my decision factor is when I go to my grocery store and I'm picking up, food for the family. that randomly, a family will come up to me and ask me to run. Or, it happened, not too long ago, I was walking down the street and, these two, young, well, I wouldn't say young, but, mid-20s, voters just came out of the cafe and just came up to me and encouraged me to run. Those are the people that are going to help me make determinations about whether or not I'm going to do this.
You were just on Air Force One with President Biden. Did you talk to him about your consideration of this race?
No. I largely talked to him about like some very Arizona-centric, issues, right? About the things that are happening in Arizona that they desperately need. So I do not focus on the politics side of this, just because I felt it would be inappropriate considering that we were on a government-funded trip.
But how do you believe the White House would handle a Gallego for Senate campaign? Would it stay out of it? Or do you think they would really help Sinema in that situation, or you?
Look, I don't know, and I can't predict it, but I will say this. If I was running for president in Arizona in 2024, I would want to be with someone that'd be proud to be going on stage with him and going to every part of Arizona, and more importantly, getting out the crucial Latino vote. Time will tell what the calculations are over there. I don't need to pressure them. They're certainly not pressuring me, but I know what a strong candidate I am and can be. And I think anybody would be happy to join me.
That's an interesting point, Congressman. You're saying as you look ahead, 2024, obviously a presidential year, it seems like you're suggesting that the Democrats at the national level, whether it's the White House or Senate Democratic leadership, can't sit on the sidelines in Arizona in 2024 and be hands off on the Senate race. You would want them to back the Democrat in the race with a wholehearted effort, regardless of whether you run.
Absolutely. Look, you need Arizona to make sure that we win the Electoral College. And we have razor-thin elections. And we have a growing Latino electorate in Arizona that can be very crucial and consequential to winning statewide. So if you don't have a good candidate at the top of the ticket, obviously not the president, talking everyone else below that, it could really cause a ripple effect that could be negative, in terms of political outcome. And I think at the end of the day, Democrats nationally understand how key Arizona is. So this is not just about a Arizona Senate race. It's not just about Kyrsten Sinema's future. It's really about the future of this country, about what happens in Arizona.
Have you spoken to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer about your outlook on Arizona and the Senate race?
Not recently. And we've had a lot of conversations in the past, but we will obviously be making our decisions and then reaching out to them, and then they'll have to make their decision about what the next steps are.
Will you talk to him before you make your decision?
Probably not.
Interesting. Why not?
Because he will not determine my future. Again, it's the people of Arizona, my family. He is not in a position even to make decisions. He has to balance the needs of the caucus first. And by the time they figure out how they're going to balance Sinema still being there and me running for office, it's going to be too late. So once I make my decision, I'll go, and then we'll talk to him at some point if he wants to.
You mentioned 2024, Congressman. Do you believe President Biden will run for re-election, and would you support him?
I think President Biden should run for re-election, and I would support him. I think people need to stop betting against Biden. He's had the most consequential, I would say one of the most consequential first 4 years as a Democratic president in quite a while. And I think people continue to underestimate him, including people within our own party. And I think he's going to run, and he's going to run strong in 2024.
Let's say you get into the Senate race, Senator Sinema running as an independent. What do the Republicans do in Arizona? Would they put up a Doug Ducey like the governor, that type of more conservative, traditional Republican, or do you see them moving again in that Kerry Lake direction, much more the Trump wing? How do you think they would handle a three-way race?
Well, I think if you look at the past, the Republicans have always put up someone that represents the viewpoints of the base of the Republican Party in Arizona. So I think they would probably still put up somebody that is considered extreme. And they could also put up Doug Ducey. I think he's a fine person, but he would also lose anyway. Arizona's changed. It's been changing for quite a while. I think the DC punditry still wants to put us as a Goldwater state, when in fact we've been moving quite beyond that for a while. And if you need any proof, just look at the last 3 elections that we've had statewide. and see the success that Democrats have had.
On policy, what is the contrast with you and Senator Sinema? She's frustrated some Democrats, for example, for not pushing to overhaul the filibuster to pass the voting rights legislation. She's frustrated some Democrats on tax policy. What makes you different as a Democrat?
Well, look, I think you have to think about it this way, right? It's not that we're mad about her, about the filibuster. We're mad about the consequences of her not actually being able to protect voting rights, especially in Arizona, where we've had a lot of attacks on our voting rights. The discussion about tax policy, it's not that we 100% disagree with her tax policy. The fact is that from what people perceive in Arizona, she cares more of the tax policy of the people in New York City than the tax policy of the people in Arizona. And lastly, even with all of these things, whether we are aligned or not aligned, the fact is that she doesn't talk to her constituents. She doesn't go and actually say, this is my belief, this is why I'm doing this. There is no explanation for it. She is out of touch with Arizonans. So even if we do align or we don't align with something, we don't actually know where her heart is anymore, because she has stopped meeting with almost anybody in Arizona. It's the only way you're going to meet with Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona is that you have to have a fundraiser and you have to contribute to that fundraiser. That's not the way representative government should work.
It sounds like you're sharpening your arguments already. Seems like you're, again, likely to run for U.S. Senate.
Well, if you've ever followed me before, I've always had sharp arguments for almost everything, so this is nothing new.
What about the new Congress? Do you believe the Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy, will be the next Speaker of the House?
Look, I think if you haven't been able to form your coalition for you to be Speaker of the House by now, it tells you two things. Number one, either A, he's not going to be Speaker of the House, or B, he's only going to be Speaker of the House in name only. And in order for him to become Speaker, that he had to have basically diluted his power to a point where he is basically just a symbolic head of his caucus. I don't see Kevin McCarthy being Speaker for very long, to be honest. I think he's not going to be able to control his caucus. I think we'll quickly find ourselves in a debt limit fight and a budget fight. And I think he, by his lack of leadership, he's going to end up dooming his caucus to only one term in the majority.
Are Democrats in the House behind the scenes right now thinking through a strategy for the Speaker vote on the floor? Suppose McCarthy can't reach the threshold. Do Democrats have a plan and how they would handle that moment?
Look, at this point, I don't think we are actively figuring out a way, especially in terms of trying to create some coalition government. I think that's what you're trying to get at. The Republicans have to handle their mess on their own. There's clearly a lot of factions within that party. In order for us to get to a point where we would want to even work with them in a coalition type of situation, there'd have to be a lot of compromise on values that are very important to us. And there is no able partner across the way right now.
One issue that might win some bipartisan support next year in a divided House is support for Ukraine. You're a military veteran, served this country in uniform. You're a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Do you believe House Republicans will work with House Democrats next year to sustain funding for Ukraine? And how do you see that playing out, and at what levels?
Well, I certainly hope so. I actually just led a bipartisan delegation to Ukraine this last weekend. I believe that the majority of the Republican caucus understands the importance of helping Ukraine defend itself, make sure it stays a free and sovereign country and stops Russian aggression. I think we can work with our colleagues there. There are some concerns that I've heard about tracking weapons. I think let's come up with a compromise to make sure we understand where all of our money to Ukraine, all the weapons we transfer to Ukraine, where are they? I think that's a legitimate concern. I trust Ukraine. I've seen their accounting standards to do this. But if that helps to get our colleagues on board, then let's do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We can also have legitimate and respectful debate about the level of support, right? Maybe it's a little too high on one end. Maybe it could be different type of armaments here. But I think we can work across the aisle to that. As long as we understand the goal of this is to make sure that, number one, Ukraine stays free, and number two, that they are able to push Russia out. My concern is that according to the potential rules of the Republican caucus, is that if if the Republicans want to support the Ukraine funding bill, if it doesn't have enough votes within the caucus to get to the floor, that it will not get to the floor. That doesn't encourage bipartisanship. I hope that is something that they jettison, especially when it comes to extremely important issues like this. And if they do that, then yes, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for us to work across the aisle.
Final question here, Congressman. As someone who has served, who's on the Armed Services Committee, what is your assessment of Russia and Vladimir Putin's potential to use a nuclear weapon in the coming months?
It's my belief that they will keep squawking that they're going to do it. I don't believe they will use a nuclear weapon of any size, because you hear nuclear weapon, tactical weapon. I don't believe they're going to do that at any point. I think they understand that there's severe consequences when you escalate to that point that will be beyond their control. And lastly, any hopes of Russia ever joining, in good standing our world order, to be able to trade their oil, to be able to allow their people to freely, cross, borders, I think would go out the window, and it's something that would severely impact Putin's overall long-term control in his country.
Congressman Ruben Gallego of Arizona represents the Phoenix area, moving closer to a Senate run, but he wasn't ready to announce it just yet here on CBS News.
You did a good job, though, trying.
But we appreciate you taking a few minutes to discuss your potential run and your political future. Congressman, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.